You think those old kitchen tricks your grandmother swore by were just superstition? Think again. Modern science has vindicated what 1970s home cooks knew instinctively, that the simplest methods often worked better than anything corporations tried to sell. Let's dig into 30 banned kitchen hacks from the 1970s that scientists now say were genius. Saving bacon grease in a tin on the back of the stove was one of the most essential kitchen practices in 1970s households that health authorities once condemned as dangerous. Families kept small metal containers near the stove, carefully straining hot bacon drippings through cheesecloth after every breakfast. The golden fat collected over weeks became a cooking staple more valuable than store-bought oils. Women used it to fry eggs, season vegetables, make gravy, and add richness to cornbread batter. Modern nutritionists spent decades warning against saturated fats, pushing families toward processed vegetable oils instead. But recent research has reversed this thinking. Studies now show that natural animal fats contain essential vitamins and may actually be healthier than the chemically processed alternatives. The bacon grease tin represented the waste-nothing philosophy that sustained families through lean times. Scientists now confirm what grandmothers always knew: real food beats factory-made substitutes. Storing tomatoes on the counter instead of the refrigerator was standard practice in 1970s kitchens that modern food safety guidelines tried to eliminate. Home cooks kept their tomatoes in fruit bowls or on windowsills where they stayed at room temperature until ready to use. The reasoning was simple. Cold tomatoes tasted like cardboard, while room temperature ones burst with flavor. For decades, food safety experts pushed refrigeration as the only safe method for produce. But scientists have confirmed what every 1970s grandmother knew. Refrigeration damages cells inside tomatoes and destroys volatile compounds that create their distinctive taste and aroma. Studies from the University of Florida found that tomatoes stored below 50 degrees permanently lose flavor-producing enzymes. The cold literally kills what makes a tomato worth eating. This hack represented intuitive food knowledge passed down through generations. Women learned from their mothers that certain produce belonged on the counter, and they were absolutely right. Making bone broth from leftover carcasses was a cornerstone of 1970s thrift cooking that fell out of fashion as convenience foods took over. After roasting a chicken or cooking a ham, nothing went to waste. Bones went into large stock pots with vegetable scraps covered with water and simmered for hours until the liquid turned rich and golden. This broth became the foundation for soups, gravies, and sauces that stretched meals further. Modern processed bouillon cubes promised convenience but delivered only salt and artificial flavors. Food manufacturers convinced families that homemade stock was unnecessary work. But scientists have confirmed that properly made bone broth contains collagen, glycine, and minerals that support gut health and reduce inflammation. The gelatin released during long simmering provides amino acids that commercial products cannot match. What 1970s cooks understood intuitively, that slow-simmered bones created something nourishing, has been validated by modern nutrition research. Leaving butter on the counter in a covered dish was universal practice in the 1970s kitchens that health officials later declared unsafe. Families kept butter crocks on countertops where butter stayed soft and spreadable at room temperature. Morning toast got real butter that spread smoothly without tearing bread apart. Refrigeration advocates spent years warning about bacterial growth from room temperature dairy. But scientists now confirm that butter's high fat content and low moisture make it naturally resistant to bacterial contamination. Properly salted butter can safely remain at room temperature for days without spoiling. The USDA has acknowledged that counter butter poses minimal risk when kept covered. What 1970s families knew from practical experience has been validated by food science. Cold butter was difficult to use and often led to more waste as families struggled to spread rock-hard slabs. Room temperature butter was practical, delicious, and perfectly safe all along. Using cast iron skillets for everything from cornbread to fried chicken was the backbone of 1970s cooking that non-stick coatings tried to replace. Heavy black pans passed down through generations sat on every stove, their surfaces seasoned by decades of use into naturally slick cooking surfaces. Women knew cast iron distributed heat evenly and could go from stovetop to oven without hesitation. When non-stick cookware arrived promising easy cleanup, many families abandoned their cast iron. But science has revealed troubling truths about those convenient coatings. When overheated, they release toxic fumes, and their chemical compounds have been linked to health concerns. Meanwhile, cast iron has been vindicated completely. Studies show it adds dietary iron to food, lasts multiple lifetimes with proper care, and creates superior browning. The seasoning process creates a natural non-stick surface without chemicals. What 1970s cooks treasured has proven scientifically superior to modern alternatives. Fermenting vegetables in crocks on the counter was an ancient preservation method that 1970s families still practiced before commercial canning made it seem unnecessary. Cabbage became sauerkraut, cucumbers became pickles, and vegetables transformed through salt and thyme. Women packed vegetables into ceramic crocks, weighted them down, and let beneficial bacteria work over days or weeks. Food safety regulations discouraged home fermentation, pushing families towards sterile canned goods and vinegar pickles. But modern science has completely reversed this position. Research shows that lacto-fermented vegetables contain probiotics essential for gut health, more bioavailable vitamins than raw vegetables, and natural preservatives that keep food safe without refrigeration. What seemed like old-fashioned kitchen witchcraft has been validated as sophisticated food science humans practiced for thousands of years. The 1970s families who kept fermentation traditions alive were preserving knowledge that modern medicine is only now rediscovering. Cooking with lard instead of vegetable shortening was standard practice in 1970s kitchens that health campaigns later demonized. Rendered pork fat created the flakiest pie crusts, the crispiest fried chicken, and the most tender biscuits. Women kept containers of home-rendered lard or bought it by the pound from butchers who understood its value. The anti-saturated fat crusade pushed families toward vegetable shortening and margarine, marketed as heart-healthy alternatives. But these industrial substitutes contained trans fats that proved far more dangerous than natural fats. Scientists now acknowledge that trans fats cause the very heart problems they were supposed to prevent, while natural lard has been rehabilitated. Studies show lard contains less saturated fat than butter and more heart-healthy monounsaturated fat than previously recognized. The crispy results 1970s cooks achieved came from a product that was never the villain health authorities claimed. Industrial processing creates problems while claiming to solve them. Soaking dried beans overnight with a pinch of baking soda was a kitchen trick every 1970s grandmother swore by that modern cooks dismissed as unnecessary. The night before making soup, women covered dried legumes with water and added baking soda to the soaking liquid. The beans plumped up overnight and cooked faster the next day, becoming creamy and tender without hours of simmering. Quick cooking methods and canned beans made this practice seem obsolete. Why soak overnight when you could open a can in seconds? But food scientists have confirmed the baking soda method works through real chemistry. The alkaline environment breaks down pectin in bean skins, allowing water to penetrate faster and completely. Beans soaked with baking soda cook in significantly less time and produce creamier results. The method also reduces compounds that cause digestive discomfort. What seemed like grandmother superstition was practical food chemistry that saved fuel, improved texture, and made beans more digestible. Storing onions in old pantyhose hung in cool, dark spaces was one of the quirkiest 1970s kitchen hacks that made perfect scientific sense. Women would drop an onion into the toe of clean pantyhose, tie a knot above it, add another onion, tie another knot, and continue until they had a chain of separated onions. These chains hung in basements or root cellars, where air circulated freely around each bulb. The method looked strange but worked remarkably well. Each onion remained separated and surrounded by airflow, preventing moisture buildup and rot spreading from one bulb to another. When you needed an onion, you simply cut below the knot and grabbed one. Food storage experts confirm this method extends onion life significantly compared to keeping them piled in bags. The mesh provides ideal ventilation while knots create separation. This hack demonstrated the creative problem-solving of 1970s homemakers who found solutions using materials already on hand. Resting meat after cooking before slicing was an instinctive practice. 1970s cooks followed that impatient modern methods tried to eliminate. After pulling a roast from the oven, women let meat sit on cutting boards covered loosely with foil for 5 to 20 minutes. The reasoning was simple. Meat cut too soon released all its juices onto the plate, leaving dry, tough results. Fast-paced modern cooking pushed the idea that hot food needed immediate serving. But food scientists have proven exactly what 1970s cooks observed through experience. During cooking, muscle fibers contract and push moisture toward the center. Resting allows fibers to relax and reabsorb liquid, redistributing juices throughout the meat. Studies using thermal imaging confirm that properly rested meat retains significantly more juice when sliced. The patience that 1970s grandmothers practiced created demonstrably better results than rushing food to the table. This hack cost nothing but time, yet it transformed ordinary roasts into succulent meals. Wrapping cheese in wax paper instead of plastic wrap was how 1970s cooks kept cheese fresh longer without the rubbery texture plastic created. Women folded cheese in wax paper or parchment, sometimes adding loose foil, then stored it in the refrigerator. The cheese stayed moist but could breathe, aging gracefully rather than suffocating under airtight plastic. Modern convenience pushed plastic wrap as standard for everything, promising freshness through total sealing. But food scientists confirm that cheese needs to breathe. It's a living product with cultures that continue working after purchase. Plastic traps moisture against the surface, encouraging mold and creating unpleasant, sweaty texture. Wax paper allows enough air exchange to maintain proper humidity while preventing the cheese from drying out. The old method also prevented plastic taste from transferring to fatty foods. What 1970s homemakers knew about cheese storage has been validated by dairy scientists who recommend breathable wrapping for optimal flavor and texture. Adding a splash of vinegar to poaching water for eggs was a trick every 1970s diner cook and home breakfast maker swore by. A tablespoon of white vinegar went into the simmering water before cracking eggs into the swirling liquid. The result was perfectly shaped poached eggs with tight, compact whites instead of the feathery strands that spread through plain water. Some dismissed this as kitchen folklore with no real science behind it, but food chemists have confirmed exactly why this works. The acid in vinegar causes egg white proteins to denature and coagulate faster, setting the outer layer almost instantly when it hits the water. This rapid firming prevents the whites from spreading and creates that restaurant-quality appearance. The small amount of vinegar cooks off completely, leaving no taste in the finished egg. What seemed like grandmother superstition was actually precise protein chemistry that professional kitchens worldwide still rely on today. Salting eggplant and letting it drain before cooking was mandatory in 1970s, kitchens that modern quick cooking methods tried to skip. Sliced eggplant was layered with salt in colanders, weighted down, and left to drain for 30 minutes to an hour. Brown liquid seeped out, and the flesh became denser, less spongy. Later cookbook writers dismissed this as unnecessary, insisting modern varieties had bred out the bitterness. But food scientists confirm that salting does far more than remove bitterness. It collapses cell structure, removing air pockets that otherwise absorb cooking oil like a sponge. Salted and drained eggplant requires significantly less oil to cook and develops better texture. The result is creamier flesh with deeper browning rather than greasy, soggy slices. What 1970s cooks practiced as ritual preparation was essential food chemistry that determines whether your eggplant parmesan becomes a masterpiece or an oily disappointment. Keeping bread in wooden bread boxes instead of the refrigerator was standard practice in 1970s. Kitchens that modern food safety advice tried to change. Loaves sat in ventilated boxes on countertops, staying soft and fresh for days without the staleness that refrigerated bread developed. Well-meaning experts warned that room temperature storage encouraged mold growth, pushing families to refrigerate everything. But scientists have proven that refrigeration actually accelerates staling through a process called retrogradation. Cold temperatures cause bread starches to crystallize faster, creating that dry, tough texture within days. Counter storage at moderate temperatures keeps bread softer longer, while the bread box environment prevents both excessive drying and moisture buildup. The slight air circulation prevents mold while maintaining optimal humidity. Modern bread science has completely vindicated what 1970s homemakers knew. The refrigerator is the worst place to store bread unless you plan to freeze it completely. Using wooden cutting boards instead of plastic was universal in the 1970s kitchens until health officials warned that wood harbored dangerous bacteria. Heavy maple and oak boards took the beating of daily knife work, developing grooves and character over years of use. Families were told to switch to plastic boards that could be sanitized in dishwashers and replaced cheaply when scratched. But microbiologists have completely reversed this advice. Studies show that wooden boards actually have natural antibacterial properties. Bacteria drawn into wood fibers die within minutes, while bacteria on plastic boards survive in knife grooves indefinitely. The porous nature of wood that seemed like a liability proved to be its greatest strength. Wood also preserves knife edges better than hard plastic surfaces. What 1970s grandmothers treasured as essential kitchen tools have been scientifically proven safer and more practical than the plastic alternatives that replaced them. Letting hot food cool on the counter before refrigerating was common practice in the 1970s. Kitchens that modern food safety guidelines condemned as dangerous. Pots of soup and casserole dishes sat out until they stopped steaming before going into the refrigerator. Women knew that putting hot food directly in the fridge warmed up everything else inside and created condensation problems. Health authorities warned about the danger zone where bacteria multiply rapidly, insisting food should be refrigerated immediately. But the science is more nuanced than blanket warnings suggested. Hot food placed directly in refrigerators raises internal temperature and can actually push other foods into unsafe ranges longer. Modern commercial refrigerators handle this better, but 1970s home units struggled with large heat loads. Cooling food to room temperature before refrigerating, within reasonable time limits, often protected the entire refrigerator contents better than immediate refrigeration of steaming hot pots. Adding salt to water before boiling pasta was a practice every 1970s Italian grandmother insisted upon that modern cooks questioned as merely traditional. A generous handful of salt went into the pot before the water even reached a boil, creating what old cookbooks called water that tastes like the sea. Some argued that salt raised boiling temperature and cooked pasta faster, others that unsalted water worked just as well. Food scientists have confirmed that the salt does not significantly affect cooking time or boiling point at kitchen concentrations. But salting the water matters enormously for flavor. Pasta absorbs water as it cooks, and that's the only opportunity to season the noodle itself from within. Unseasoned pasta tastes flat no matter how flavorful the sauce. Studies show properly salted cooking water creates pasta that tastes seasoned throughout rather than just coated with sauce. What seemed like old-world tradition was actually essential flavor chemistry that cannot be replicated by salting pasta after cooking. Storing potatoes in paper bags in dark, cool spaces was how 1970s families kept their spuds firm for months rather than weeks. Potatoes went into heavy brown bags, sometimes wrapped in newspaper, then stored in basements, root cellars, or the darkest corner of the pantry. Light and warmth were enemies that turned potatoes green and sprouting. Modern plastic bags and bright kitchens seemed like conveniences until potatoes started spoiling faster than anyone remembered. Scientists confirm that potatoes exposed to light produce solanine, a toxic compound that causes the green coloring and bitter taste. The darkness of paper bags prevents this entirely. Paper also allows moisture to escape while maintaining humidity, preventing both rotting and shriveling. Plastic traps moisture and accelerates decay. The cool temperatures slow metabolic processes that cause sprouting. What 1970s homemakers practiced as common sense has been validated as optimal food science for potato longevity. Marinating tough meat in buttermilk overnight was a Southern kitchen tradition that tenderized cheap cuts into something resembling more expensive steaks. Chuck roasts, round steaks, and chicken pieces soaked in buttermilk baths for hours or overnight before cooking. The meat emerged pale and slightly soft, ready to be breaded, fried, or braised into tender results. Modern marinades relied on acids like vinegar or citrus, but buttermilk worked differently, and some questioned whether it did anything at all. Food scientists have confirmed that buttermilk's lactic acid gently breaks down protein fibers without the toughening effect that stronger acids can cause. The calcium in buttermilk also activates enzymes within the meat that further tenderize it from inside. Unlike harsh acidic marinades that can turn meat mushy on the surface, buttermilk creates even tenderization throughout. Southern cooks knew what science has now proven. Buttermilk transforms tough, affordable cuts into genuinely tender eating. Keeping fresh herbs in glasses of water on the counter like cut flowers was how 1970s cooks maintained their parsley, cilantro, and basil for weeks instead of days. Stems were trimmed and placed in jars or glasses with an inch of water, sometimes loosely covered with plastic bags, and kept on countertops away from direct sun. The herbs stayed perky and green far longer than anything stored in refrigerator crisper drawers. Modern storage relied on plastic bags and cold temperatures that wilted delicate herbs within days. But botanists and food scientists confirm that most herbs are essentially still living plants that continue biological processes after harvest. Water keeps them hydrated and alive, while cold refrigerator air desiccates their delicate leaves. Basil particularly suffers in cold storage, turning black and slimy. The countertop water method extends herb life dramatically and costs nothing. What 1970s homemakers observed practically has been validated scientifically. Treat herbs like flowers and they last like flowers. Blanching vegetables before freezing was a step 1970s home canners never skipped that modern freezer users often ignore entirely. Green beans, corn, peas, and broccoli were plunged into boiling water for precise times, then immediately shocked in ice water before packaging for the freezer. The extra work seemed tedious when you could simply bag raw vegetables and freeze them directly. But food scientists have confirmed that blanching deactivates enzymes that continue breaking down vegetables even at freezing temperatures. Without this step, frozen vegetables develop off flavors, mushy textures, and lose nutritional value within weeks. Blanched vegetables maintain color, texture, and nutrients for months longer. The brief heat treatment also kills surface bacteria and removes air from plant tissues, further improving storage quality. What 1970s preservers learned from extension service bulletins was precise food science that modern convenient shortcuts cannot replicate. Scoring bread dough before baking was a technique every 1970s home baker followed that seemed purely decorative until science explained its necessity. Sharp knives or razor blades slashed patterns across risen loaves just before they entered hot ovens. The cuts looked artistic, but served critical structural purposes that bakers understood intuitively. During the first minutes of baking, bread undergoes dramatic expansion called oven spring as trapped gases heat and expand rapidly. Without scoring, this expansion happens unpredictably. Crusts burst at weak points, creating misshapen loaves with dense, gummy interiors. Proper scoring controls exactly where and how the bread expands, allowing even rising and proper crust development. The cuts also increase surface area for better browning and create the distinctive artisan appearance. What seemed like grandmother's fussy habit was actually essential baking physics that determines whether your loaf rises into beauty or collapses into disappointment. Proofing yeast in warm water with sugar before adding to dough was a mandatory first step in 1970s. Bread recipes that instant yeast made seem obsolete. Active dry yeast went into lukewarm water with a pinch of sugar, then sat for 10 minutes until it foamed and bubbled before mixing with flour. Modern instant yeast promised to skip this step entirely, going straight into dry ingredients. But food scientists confirm that proofing serves purposes beyond simply hydrating yeast. The foaming proves your yeast is actually alive and active before you invest time and ingredients in a batch of dough. Dead yeast produces flat, dense bread regardless of how carefully you follow remaining steps. The sugar feeds the yeast and jumpstarts fermentation, giving your dough a head start on flavor development. While instant yeast can work without proofing, the traditional method provides quality control that prevents wasted effort and disappointing results. Tempering chocolate by cooling and reheating was a technique 1970s candy makers practiced that seemed unnecessarily complicated until you saw the difference it made. Melted chocolate was spread on marble slabs, worked with scrapers until partially cooled, then gently rewarmed to precise temperatures before dipping or molding. The process looked like kitchen theater compared to simply melting chocolate and using it. But food scientists have explained exactly why tempering matters. Chocolate contains cocoa butter crystals that can form in 6 different configurations. Only one configuration produces the glossy shine, satisfying snap, and smooth texture of professional chocolate. Untempered chocolate sets with unstable crystals that bloom gray and crumble instead of snapping cleanly. The cooling and reheating process creates seed crystals of the correct type that then guide proper crystallization throughout. What seemed like candy maker superstition was actually precise crystallography. Sifting flour before measuring was a step every 1970s. Recipe demanded that modern cooks routinely skip as fussy and unnecessary. Flour went through fine mesh sifters before being spooned into measuring cups, aerating the powder and removing lumps. Contemporary recipes often omit this step, assuming modern flour arrives properly processed. But food scientists confirm that flour compacts significantly during storage and shipping. A cup of packed flour can weigh 30% more than a cup of sifted flour. This difference dramatically affects baking ratios, producing dense cakes, tough cookies, and heavy breads. Sifting also incorporates air that contributes to lighter textures and ensures even distribution of leavening agents mixed into flour. The few seconds spent sifting prevents the inconsistent results that plague bakers who measure flour straight from the bag. Professional bakers weigh ingredients precisely, but home bakers following cup measurements need sifting for accurate results. Deglazing pans with wine or stock after searing meat was a technique 1970s cooks performed automatically that modern quick cooking often skips. After browning meat, liquid went into the hot pan while scraping the browned bits stuck to the bottom. The sizzling liquid loosened these fond particles and created instant pan sauces. Fast-paced cooking treated fond as mess to be scrubbed away rather than flavor to capture. But food scientists have identified these browned bits as concentrated flavor compounds created through the Maillard reaction, the same chemistry that makes seared meat taste better than boiled. Deglazing dissolves and recovers these compounds, transforming them into sauces with depth that cannot be achieved any other way. The technique also cleans the pan while creating dinner, combining practicality with flavor extraction. What 1970s cooks practiced as basic kitchen sense was actually capturing irreplaceable chemistry that shortcuts waste. Aging homemade pickles for weeks before eating was standard practice in 1970s, kitchens that instant refrigerator pickles tried to replace. Cucumbers packed in brine sat in crocks or jars for weeks, slowly fermenting and developing complex flavors before anyone considered them ready. Modern quick pickle recipes promised similar results in hours using vinegar and refrigeration, but food scientists confirm these are fundamentally different products. True fermented pickles develop probiotics, enzymatic changes, and flavor compounds that require time to form. The slow transformation creates depth, tang, and texture that vinegar-brined quick pickles cannot match. Fermented pickles also contain beneficial bacteria that support digestive health, while vinegar pickles are preserved vegetables without probiotic benefits. The patience, 1970s. Pickle makers practiced produced genuinely superior results that no shortcut can replicate. Curing bacon with salt and thyme instead of injection was how 1970s smokehouses produced bacon with flavor and texture that commercial processors abandoned. pork bellies were rubbed with salt, sugar, and spices, then left to cure slowly for days or weeks in cool spaces before smoking. Modern bacon production injects brine solution directly into meat, curing in hours what traditionally took weeks. But food scientists acknowledge this speed comes with trade-offs. Injected bacon contains more water, shrinks dramatically when cooked, and lacks the concentrated flavor of dry-cured versions. Traditional curing allows salt to penetrate slowly while drawing out moisture, creating denser meat with more intense pork flavor. The extended time also develops complex flavor compounds through enzymatic action. What seemed like old-fashioned inefficiency was actually patient craftsmanship that mass production sacrificed for speed and profit. Cooking dried pasta in minimal water was actually how many 1970s Italian home cooks prepared their noodles, contradicting later advice about huge pots of boiling water. Pasta went into just enough water to cover, with frequent stirring to prevent sticking. American cookbooks later insisted on gallons of rapidly boiling water per pound of pasta. But food scientists have recently confirmed that the traditional minimal water method works perfectly well and offers advantages. The starchier cooking water that results from less dilution creates better sauce adhesion and can be used to adjust sauce consistency more effectively. Pasta cooked in minimal water reaches proper texture just as reliably as the abundant water method while using less energy and time. What seemed like immigrant thrift was actually practical technique that produces excellent results with significantly less resource waste. Storing coffee in the freezer to maintain freshness was advice 1970s households followed that coffee experts later denounced as flavor-destroying heresy. Opened cans and bags went into freezers to slow the staling process, especially for families who drank coffee slowly. Modern coffee culture insisted that freezing damaged beans and room temperature storage with sealing was superior. But food scientists have rehabilitated freezer storage under specific conditions. Properly sealed coffee stored at freezer temperatures does maintain freshness longer than room temperature storage, especially for extended periods. The key is preventing moisture absorption and limiting freeze-thaw cycles that cause condensation. For everyday coffee drinkers who purchase large quantities, freezer storage in airtight containers extends usable life significantly. What seemed like outdated practice was actually reasonable food science for certain storage situations. Newspaper window cleaning was standard practice in the 1960s households where women achieved crystal-clear glass without purchasing specialized products or paper towels. The technique involved crumpling newspaper pages and using them with vinegar solution to wipe windows until they sparkled without streaks. Modern materials scientists explain this worked because newspaper ink contained carbon black and petroleum oils that polished glass while dense fibers absorbed moisture without leaving threads. The slightly abrasive texture removed stubborn spots cloth alone could not eliminate. This method cost essentially nothing since newspapers were household staples purchased for content, then repurposed. Cleaning professionals today still recommend this technique for professional results without expensive tools. The shift to digital news and concerns about ink transfer led homemakers to abandon newspaper cleaning for paper towels. Scientists confirm the old method remains superior for streak-free results requiring no chemical additives. If starch holds things like pasta and rice together and rinsing it out gives you nicely separated grains and fluffy pasta, what happens when you add starch back in? Well, exactly what you would think. Potatoes are a great source of starch, and adding them to any kind of soup, stew, or broth would help thicken the consistency exponentially. If you are not the type to enjoy thin, clearer broths, then adding mashed potatoes into your cauldron will help a lot. As the potatoes cook, they end up releasing starch, which holds the soup together much better, giving it a velvety texture that feels great with every spoonful. If you don't feel like going the extra mile with all the prep mashed potatoes require, don't worry. You can always just add in some instant potato flakes for relatively the same effect. Remember, the name of the game this time is starch, not the potatoes themselves, though they make a great side to any broth. Candy dishes would usually always be filled to the brim with wrapped sweets, especially if we are discussing the holiday season. As soon as you had October roll around, people would start preemptively planning their best Halloween ideas and what candies they were going to get to fill up the dishes this year. Many even had really decorative designs to them, like colorful or cut glass and spooky patterning. It was all a part of setting up the vibe of your home back in the day. Going out shopping for new and in-style candy dishes is a thing of the past now. But when people engaged in this activity, it was a bonding event for families. So was emptying those dishes every week, by the way. Pre-freezing pies really helps before you delve deep into that baking rabbit hole, and it's for two reasons. You get a much flakier crust, which I'm assuming is something you want, and the fillings also stay really even, which I know you want. So, there are some sciencey reasons behind why this happens, and we'll definitely be getting into them. But if you're here for the too long, didn't read the version, then basically, moisture control, temperature regulation, and it helps keep the fat. Now, for the actual explanation. So, pie dough has a lot of cold fat, and that's what helps make that really flaky texture in the first place. Pre-freezing helps to solidify that fact and make sure the fat remains as solid as it can be, and the fat hopefully maintains its structure too. Plus, when you usually bake a pie without freezing it, the soft, soggy, and moist filling can keep the bottom crust really soggy. And this is a problem because you always want a firm base for your pie. The cold temperature of a pie that's been pre-frozen is an entirely different ballgame, though. This helps slow the process down in the oven, and overall, the fat at the bottom of the dough solidifies before the filling has a chance to soften it up. The filling itself is also getting more set and firm, and that's because being frozen helps keep it in a solid state, which helps make sure that it cooks more evenly. So, just a small trip in the freezer can give your pie the pick-me-up it needed, huh? Butter dishes with lids were something that you would find in almost every household. Just like you would walk in most homes today and expect to find a coffee maker or a deep fryer, back then, in the age of our grandparents, butter dishes were very popular ways of storing the spread. You would keep them at room temperature instead of in the fridge, so they were always soft and spreadable, and you would protect them from any dirt. These existed even before the time of accessible and affordable refrigeration, and they were made from glass or ceramic. Usually, they would be pretty fashionable too, with lots of unique designs and ornate detail put into them. Speaking of fridges, how did people preserve things before they came around? Because keeping everything in a prison of ice was not ideal either. Speaking of turnoffs, something that detracts from all the maritime goodness fish has to offer is that offensive odor that tends to come with most seafood you will catch. Funnily enough, soaking your fish in milk can quickly eliminate that issue. Look, there is no easy way to say it. It stinks, and it stinks bad. It is not something you would want with your food, much less constantly oozing out of your fridge every time you open it. Grandmas did know that fish is too essential of a superfood to just cut out of the diets of growing healthy kids, though. Naturally, they did what they do best and scoured the ends of the culinary world looking for a way to solve the problem. The answer was always much closer to them than they would think, almost right under their nose. When you soak fish in milk for about 20 minutes, it bonds with the protein in the milk and the compounds in the fish responsible for that ghastly smell stick with the beverage afterwards. When you extract it, you get a clean-tasting fish with none of that ridiculous funk. Cast iron cooking was more than tradition in 1960s kitchens, where heavy black skillets passed down through generations served purposes beyond durability. Women who cooked daily in these pans unknowingly supplemented their families with dietary iron that leached into acidic foods like tomatoes and eggs. Studies now confirm that cooking in cast iron increases iron content by as much as 20 times. The seasoned surface created by years of cooking with lard formed a natural non-stick coating that modern chemists struggle to replicate without harmful compounds. Grandmothers knew never to wash these pans with soap, instead wiping them clean and heating them dry to maintain that precious seasoning. Scientists today recognize this prevented bacterial growth while preserving the polymerized fat layer. The weight distributed heat evenly, eliminating hot spots that burned food in thinner pans. When aluminum and Teflon arrived, promising convenience, cast iron was dismissed as outdated. Nowadays, we just do not get cookie jars anymore. It is not like most households do not use them, but in the past, it was a lot more common for people to walk in, see a glass of milk next to a ceramic cookie jar, and then proceed to have an overly sweet and good time. Today, You cannot get that experience because everything comes pre-packaged and made for commercial mass production and sale, focusing on resealable containers that people do not need storage for in other ways. Today, the typical family focuses a lot on being minimal or having glass containers which are better at storing things than cookie jars, but the aesthetic of them was really nice. Potatoes are really starchy, and this gives them a lot of benefits outside the kitchen and your plate of food too. It helps them take away any kind of excess salt from your dish by just making sure that you don't have excessive moisture. As we have gone through so many times in this video already, the moisture amount in your food needs to be just right for a lot of things to work, as they ideally should. Potatoes, being composed almost entirely of starch, have a massive capacity for absorbing all kinds of liquids. You put raw potatoes into some kind of soup, stew, or sauce, and just watch as it takes away the liquid and salt. Most of the salty liquid gets absorbed by the potatoes thanks to a process known as osmosis. This is what happens when liquids or water move from one object to another to balance out the overall concentrations. The starches of the potato help to make a membrane that helps to draw the liquid into the potato. Plus, besides just that, potatoes are really good at diluting salt. Why does this help? It helps to keep the salt-to-food ratio low, which ensures that your steak or burger is just the right amount of bitter and not overpoweringly so. All in all, a little potatoes on the side have more benefits than you'd initially expect. Vinegar cleaning solutions dominated 1960s households where thrifty homemakers mixed white vinegar with water for everything from windows to floors without reaching for commercial products. This simple acid cut through grease and grime while leaving surfaces streak-free in ways expensive cleaners often failed to match. Modern testing confirms that vinegar's acetic acid kills common bacteria, including E. coli and Salmonella, validating what grandmothers knew from experience. The solution was safe around children and pets, leaving no toxic residues on surfaces where food was prepared. Windows cleaned with vinegar and newspaper dried without filmy residue that commercial sprays left behind. The sharp smell dissipated quickly, unlike synthetic fragrances that triggered allergies. Homemakers added essential oils like lemon for pleasant scents while boosting antibacterial properties. When aerosol sprays flooded shelves, vinegar retreated to salad dressings. Scientists warn many commercial cleaners contain harmful chemicals. Actually, let's go back to rice for a bit. Some people do, in fact, like sticky rice. Though they were a minority back in the days of our grandparents, they have become quite a vocal group nowadays. That is why tricks that our grandmas invented, like cooking rice in coconut milk, are making a sharp comeback because people finally decided not to sleep on thick and creamy rice. If you add in the stuff, then it gives rice fat and sweetness and also helps prevent water from getting into it. You know what that means? The rice stays together and gets a much more vivid texture than you would otherwise be used to. If you ever get bored of plain rice, try this neat little variation for yourself. Whether it's for a nostalgic trip or to explore a new world of rice you haven't experienced before. Salt is really good at quickly cleaning your iron pans. This happens for a few reasons, but two of them are that salt just happens to be inherently very abrasive, and it's also very good at degreasing. This helps food that's stuck on the pan and any grease that also won't go away to come off easily. You don't want to be damaging the surface of your pan after all. Why is salt like that though? Salt happens to be really coarse, and that makes it really good for situations where you would need an abrasive. Sprinkle just a little bit on a hot pan with a bit of leftover oil and start scrubbing with a cloth. You'll see the difference almost immediately, and that's all thanks to the coarseness of salt. Why does salt work as a degreaser? Well, that's because when you use it alongside heat, salt changes its properties a little, as most things do when they come into contact with heat. Now, salt can help to absorb and break down greasy surfaces because it helps draw that grease away. Salt has a lot of good absorption properties too. It's really good at taking away moisture from other liquids and oils. It's also good for preventing some rust, but that's a little side tip I'm including for free. Just like breadcrumbs have become synonymous with providing the perfect golden, crunchy exterior, crushed cornflakes have the same reputation from our grandparents' days. Most things you would add this to, like chicken fillets or strips, would get significantly more crunchier and crispier. And the coating did not taste as much like cereal as you are thinking it would. It actually just tasted like pretty good skin, the kind that crumbles and falls apart in your mouth as you bite into it. Probably the biggest benefit of your grandma cooking things up this way was that it really cut down on the grease factor. That can leave even the most loyal, crispy chicken lover feeling bloated, oily, and a little turned off for the day. Fermented vegetables filled crocks in the 1960s pantries, where sauerkraut, pickles, and kimchi provided probiotics long before the term entered vocabulary. The lacto-fermentation process created beneficial bacteria that populated digestive systems and supported immune function in ways modern science has documented. Grandmothers maintained fermentation crocks carefully. Understanding these preserved vegetables contributed something essential to family health. The process increased vitamin content, particularly B vitamins and vitamin K2, while making minerals more bioavailable. The sour tang of properly fermented vegetables indicated successful bacterial activity, transforming raw ingredients into living foods. Salt concentration and temperature control were managed through experience passed from mother to daughter. When pasteurized canned vegetables and refrigeration made fermentation seem unnecessary, living foods largely disappeared from American tables. Scientists now recommend fermented foods as essential for gut microbiome health. Baking soda is a renowned cleaner across the globe. Got cat piss on your bedsheet? Somebody puked because they couldn't handle their liquor? Just a bad day? Or was that burger not fresh enough? Whatever your stink-radiating issue is, baking soda is there to clean it, but why is it such a universal cleaner? I mean, what singles this one thing out as a cleaner that works in every situation when everything else has designated specialized things specifically built to clean it? This is because baking soda has all the properties you would need in a cleaner. It's only just slightly abrasive, and as we discussed with salt, that really helps in removing unwanted surfaces without causing any kind of bad damage. So that means all of your dirt, any unwanted stains, or just plain old grease buildup are all things baking soda excels at taking care of. The particles of soda are also pretty similar to salt in that they're also very coarse, and this helps clean grime too. Baking soda on top of this is ever so slightly alkaline too. It has a pH of around 9, and most common stains and issues you'll find in homes are pretty acidic. Things like baking soda help neutralize that by breaking down the oils in them, and that helps keep the stains away. It also helps take away the odors from any kind of spoiled food or excess waste too. Again, this is because these odors happen as a result of acid, and as we now know, baking soda is pretty good at canceling that out. So if you ever wanted to see an actual jack of all trades, here you go. One of the most dreaded experiences in the kitchen is when, for seemingly no reason, your avocado starts to brown past the point of no return. This happens because once avocados are exposed to oxygen, they start to produce melanin, which turns them brown. If you like your avocados green and fresh though, one really easy trick you can try every time from now on is to leave the pit and store it. Then cover the avocado with plastic wrap in an airtight container. This helps preserve it for as long as possible, and if the container was any indication, the idea here this time is to cut off all contact with oxygen as much as possible. Copper cookware lined kitchen walls in 1960s homes where serious cooks understood this metal conducted heat more evenly than any alternative. The antimicrobial properties of copper, though not understood then, provided additional benefit that modern science has documented extensively. Studies confirm bacteria, viruses, and fungi die rapidly on copper surfaces through contact killing that destroys pathogens within minutes. The responsive heat conductivity allowed cooks to adjust temperature instantly, preventing scorched sauces. French culinary tradition relied on copper for centuries, knowledge American homemakers adopted when French cooking became fashionable. The maintenance required was considerable, demanding regular polishing to prevent tarnish. When stainless steel and non-stick coatings arrived promising easier care, copper retreated to decorative status. Scientists now install copper surfaces in hospitals to reduce infection rates, validating kitchen intuition of generations past. I bet you never thought of adding rice to your salt shakers to help keep the salt fresh and make sure it doesn't stick together, but it really does work. See, salt is good at absorbing moisture, But that doesn't mean that neat little property that we've discussed so much throughout this video doesn't come with some serious side effects. Salt ends up clumping together exactly because it's so good at keeping moisture in. And what's good at absorbing moisture from other things? Rice. Rice is amazing at doing this. It can even take it in from the air, so taking away some excess moisture from salt doesn't mean a thing to the tried and tested unit that is rice. As far as grains go, this one really comes in handy in all kinds of ways. Those large chunks of salt are really difficult to break apart any other way, but if you just throw in some rice into your result shaker, you'll find a world of convenience you didn't even know existed, and it was sitting under your nose all along. Raw honey treatments for wounds and burns were common knowledge in 1960s, households where this golden substance served as first aid before modern antiseptics became standard. The antibacterial properties derived from hydrogen peroxide production, low moisture content, and acidic pH that create environments where pathogens cannot survive. Modern medical research validates this remedy so thoroughly that medical-grade honey products are now used in hospitals for treating diabetic ulcers and antibiotic-resistant infections. The osmotic effect draws moisture from bacterial cells while providing protective barrier that keeps wounds clean. Grandmothers applied honey to minor cuts, scrapes, and kitchen burns, covering them with clean cloth. The sticky consistency kept dressings in place while preventing contamination. When pharmaceutical antiseptics promised scientifically formulated protection, honey seemed like folk medicine. Researchers now study specific honey varieties for wound healing properties. How do we spice up meatballs, which are essentially the bread and butter of American homemade dinners? How many times have we all come home to spaghetti and meatballs in the fridge or eaten the leftovers for breakfast the next day? Enough times that putting some effort into varying the dish up or taking it up a few levels seems to be worth the time and energy. Luckily, this hack takes neither time nor effort away from you because it is a one-stop shop for all your meatball needs. You only need to add in a few raisins to your meatballs, and that gives it this really subtle sweetness that changes the entire flavor profile up to the point where you may be wondering why nobody ever told you about this before. Do not thank us. Thank the grandmas that invented the hack. So, you're all no stranger to the concept of heat being really good at sterilizing things. That goes for pretty much every kind of food you've ever had, but it also goes for your bottles too. Why? Well, heat actually kills a lot more things than you might know. It kills pretty much any kind of bacteria, virus, and fungi. And while I'm not trying to imply you wouldn't know that, what I do think is that people, myself included, aren't aware of just how many bacteria there are on surfaces around us. Actually, the number is staggering. They all die of around 212 degrees Fahrenheit though, and that's the temperature of boiling water. This helps to completely obliterate most of these organisms on a cellular level, which is pretty metal if you ask me. The high temperature literally breaks them down into nothing, and they either become inactive because structurally they either just can't work anymore or they are outright killed. Pretty neat, right? Not only do you end up getting your water bottles sterilized, but they end up becoming as clean as they can be too. Vintage Tupperware was particularly popular in the 1950s and 1960s, and it was known for three things. It was practical, so you could get a lot of use out of it. The designs were fresh, new, and very chic, and they had a sense of style and identity with their use of bright colors. Palettes like mint green and pink were common in the 50s, and most Tupperware also came in stronger, warmer colors like mustard yellow, turquoise, and orange. This led to households always having the chance to design their kitchen and eating space however they wanted, down to the forks, spoons, and bowls, and there was just a lot more variety than you would find today. If somebody said they were bringing out the fancy stuff, you could always be sure you would get some pretty-looking cutlery. We are quite sure that this is a universal human experience that everyone has gone through at this point, whatever corner of the planet you may be from. Sometimes you have to sew something yourself. You ask your mom where the supplies are, she points you to your grandmother, who enthusiastically pulls out a biscuit tin or container of sweets. Maybe you get a little excited and jumpy, as naturally everyone would at the sight of a free sugar rush, but when she pops the lid open, all you see are sewing supplies. Did you ever wonder why they did this? Bone broth simmering on back burners was constant in 1960s kitchens. where frugal cooks threw nothing away and extracted every nutrient from chicken carcasses and beef bones. The slow extraction released collagen, gelatin, and minerals, including calcium and magnesium, into rich golden liquid that formed the base for soups. Modern nutritional science validates this practice, confirming bone broth contains amino acids like glycine and proline that support gut health and reduce inflammation. The gelatin helps heal intestinal lining, a benefit functional medicine practitioners now prescribe for digestive disorders. Grandmothers simmered bones for 24 hours, achieving maximum extraction without understanding the chemistry. The broth was given to sick family members and nursing mothers needing easily digestible nutrition. When canned soups and bouillon cubes promised convenience, homemade bone broth seemed unnecessarily time-consuming. Today, it sells for premium prices while scientists confirm its superior profile. Taking a detour back into fluff vial, we have cake batter that gets extra airy and soft if you add in just a dash of vinegar to it. The fluffier a cake is, the better, and most bakeries and restaurants strive for that perfectly soft cake with the texture of a cloud. You do not want your cake to feel coarse, dry, or too crumbly, and nobody walked this line better than Grandma whipping up a fresh batch of baked goodness for her favorite grandchildren. How did so many grandmothers do it across the nation, though? The trend of adding vinegar to cake batter actually grew in the 70s and became a popular tactic among home chefs. They started noticing how it reacted with the baking soda, creating bubbles that helped the cake rise much more evenly and better. This sounded like a deal too good to pass up for the amount of effort it took, so from then onwards, most home-baked cakes incorporated some kind of vinegar in them. Cloth bags can actually help your cheese age just right, and I bet that sounds like a really weird mix to you, but it's as legitimate as a mix can be. The right conditions for aging all happen inside the wonderful confines of a cloth bag, so you have that for one. Basically, to age cheese and to age it properly, you need 3 different things. You need moisture that's regulated, and you need a lot of air circulation. None of that means anything if your environment isn't clean, so you need to be able to prevent contamination as well as you can. Moisture regulation is really important because as it keeps aging, then cheese starts losing moisture. Cloth bags, on the other hand, are made of really breathable material and help moisture to evaporate a bit more slowly so that the cheese doesn't get too dry. Cheese aging also helps keep air balanced since the cloth bag is really porous. All those tiny little openings help air to flow around the cheese, which you really need for the health of the rind. It helps for those helpful little bacteria and molds that you find on cheese to grow. Some of those microorganisms don't deserve to die in a heat death. They make your burger a lot better. Third of all, the bag itself just works as a natural barrier against any kind of dirty substance, insect, or material. All in all, you get a perfect vibe for your cheese. Lard rendered from pork fat was the primary cooking fat in the 1960s kitchens, where it produced flaky pie crusts, crispy fried chicken, and vegetables with rich, satisfying flavor. Nutritionists warned against animal fats, promoting vegetable oils and margarine as healthier alternatives that would prevent heart disease. Decades of research have reversed this guidance, revealing natural saturated fats like lard are more stable for cooking than polyunsaturated vegetable oils that oxidize under heat. Lard contains high levels of vitamin D when pigs are pasture-raised, a nutrient difficult to obtain elsewhere. The fat also contains oleic acid, the same heart-healthy monounsaturated fat found in olive oil. Home-rendered lard from local butchers contained no trans fats, unlike hydrogenated vegetable shortenings. Pie crusts made with lard achieved tender flakiness that butter could not match due to its unique crystalline structure. When health agencies promoted margarine, they inadvertently encouraged consumption of deadly trans fats. Okay, so you don't have any string to slice your cake with, and your knife just isn't sharp enough to make the cut, literally. What do you do? Would you believe me if I said that soap bars actually help sharpen your knives? While they'll never help do the job as well as a sharpening rod or some kind of whetstone, they can work as a last resort in a tricky situation where you really need just a bit more of an edge. Again, literally. The reason soap bars are so good for this is because of a combination of a few things we've discussed so far in the video and a few things that we haven't. So, basically, soap bars are lubricating, and you all know that. The soap helps cool down the blade by reducing the overall friction, and while you'd think this is counterproductive to sharpening, it really just means that smoother sharpening can happen since the blade doesn't overheat. This helps preserve the overall standard of your steel. So, soap isn't really that abrasive, but it is slightly abrasive, and this helps sharpen the blade just a little bit thanks to the really gritty particles you find in most bars. It also helps clean the knife, obviously, and that can really help restore some of the edge of the blade. While I bet you had no idea any of this was possible, now you know soap bars are officially in your list of things that help keep that knife cutting edge. Okay, I'm sorry, that's the last one. Which forgotten kitchen hack surprised you most? Drop your grandmother's best trick in the comments, hit like if science proved her right, and subscribe for more vintage wisdom that still works today.